Hello everyone and welcome back once again. I have been away for a while, I know, but I have been busy during that time with finishing college, getting a job, being on vacation, lots of stuff. But I'm back again with what I hope will be an interesting video, and I'm going to try to make a little bit more content today to maybe make up a bit for the lack. So one of the primary purposes of this channel, as you know, is to be a voice for conservative youth that can relate on their level with how we're seeing the world and major cultural themes, whether it's pop culture or trends or societal issues and discussions, no matter how big or small. And in pursuit of that goal, I want to make sure that I don't neglect to mention one of the biggest issues that's come up in recent weeks in the culture war and in the social conscience. And that, of course, is transgenderism. You're seeing the Dylan Mulvaney fiasco, the Bud Light boycott, the now Target boycott, and this is gaining steam on both sides. So I know the whole topic and all of its branches can be rather confusing and often self-contradictory within the trans side. So it will be hard to make full sense of all of it, but I'm going to at least attempt to break down and give an overview of some of the different factions and views on the matter and how we should handle them as conservative youth. So when it comes to transgenderism, all the positions and categories are not equal, and let's drill down and see what some of those are. So the first category, I'll start with the pro-trans side. There's a few groups on this side of the aisle. First and most obvious are the people who are suffering from gender dysphoria, typically mid-teens or entering their 20s. You see these people like on TikTok. It's that demographic, but it happens at a variety of ages. There's people in the Biden administration, etc., who have transitioned much older. And these are people who suffer from mental confusion and uncertainty in who they are as a person, what their identity is. Their mental distress is often fueled and exacerbated by social media, whether that's Instagram, TikTok, various like text posting sites too, like Tumblr is one where I believe this stuff is pretty rampant. And they can find, in the internet age, you can find somebody like you pretty much no matter who you are. You can find someone with similar confusion or more radical views than yourself who has a kind of draw that maybe if you're in that state of confusion, things will make sense when you listen to them, or it seems to make sense. So the mixed elements of being uncomfortable in your own body, which is common in puberty, of course, and then just confusion about where you are in life, and social contagion makes for a very volatile emotional cocktail, and that produces many of the people that we see posting emotional meltdowns online because they feel misunderstood or discriminated against or misgendered, etc. Depending on how much they're influenced by the trends and online voices, they may also be using opposite sex pronouns or picking up one of the vast array of neo-pronouns. I think there's another category that escapes me at the moment, but Z, Zem, Zer, etc., to describe their invented category, which is allegedly outside the binary and unique specifically to them. So that side note there, that's just making personality into a gender, which is just an unnecessary complication of everything. My response to these people is a mixture of genuine sympathy and the desire to kind of shake them by the shoulders and urge them to pull themselves together. On one hand, I do feel bad for them because they've been born into a really bad time for people struggling with this confusion. They're at least in part victims of their generation. So we live in a time where any confusion you have about yourself is validated, and people are encouraged to follow any delusion they have about themselves instead of trying to figure it out and fix that state of confusion. They're told that whatever thoughts have entered their head are correct, and how you view yourself as the authentic you. In days gone by, someone with this kind of confusion would have received sympathy from everybody and help from those around them to become more comfortable in who they are in their body, who they're born to be. And now we're told that their discomfort in their own body means the body isn't right and that they need to change it to match what they feel. So on the other hand, we also have a generation who have weakened minds and people who are governed by their own whims. If they feel a certain way for even a span of a few weeks, they throw away the thought that it might be a phase, or that there could be contributing environmental factors, or that their lifestyle needs to change, and instead they decide to radically alter their very identity to match the thoughts that have entered their mind. And a lack of mental self-control and a lack of the ability to distinguish reality from fantasy is a very deadly combination. And the next category on the trans side are the people, you'll know the names, Leah Thomas, Dylan Mulvaney's. I've spoken about Leah Thomas before, and these are the people who turn to transgenderism for their own benefit. People like Leah Thomas declaring themselves transgender and beginning to live as women because they don't stand out among male peers. And they enter female arenas to have a chance to dominate the field and feel special. And people in this group are largely attention seekers who view transgender ideology as like a gateway, a free ticket to importance, to get their spotlight, to be there, to have their 15 minutes of fame and hold the trophy. And hence we receive the meme that all the best women are men because they keep winning Woman of the Year, they keep winning the sports meets. And then we have people who are jumping on the bandwagon, not necessarily to outdo women, but rather just to gain access to places and activities that were supposed to be exclusive to females. So one such case is Dylan Mulvaney, very prominent case. Far from the only one. It is not hard to find news stories of men in some cases who have made no attempt to even present as female, which it wouldn't matter if they did. But it's just so low effort, like the motivation behind it is quite obvious. And these are the type of guys entering women's bathrooms, the spas, as we've seen in the news story, like repeatedly from, I believe it's called the We Spa, locker rooms, and causing traumatic experiences and outrage among real women that do use these spaces, because you got to think about it, like it would not feel safe at all to have a man randomly come into the women's restroom. Now he says he's a woman and it passes no questions, or they're trying to make it pass no questions. Dylan Mulvaney, in some of his early posts of his Days of Girlhood series, has shown a very strange fixation with experiencing menstruation and all that, like very niche, strange womanly things that it almost seems like he's just obsessed with this. It's clearly a mental disorder. And the brands have jumped on board to support him in his perverse and, quite frankly, creepy play acting as a woman. And he's a performing artist. He's an actor, theater kid, who used his transgenderism first as an outlet for a strange, like, fetishizing of womanhood, and now he's found it to be quite a lucrative career. And when listening to people like this talking about their identity, it seems that they might believe it themselves, and they want to be recognized as women. And to that, I can only say that when you tell yourself a lie long enough, you start to forget what's the lie, what's the truth, where is the reality and fantasy divide. And it's all mixed into this gray area now. And in some part of their mind, I would guess that they know who they truly are. Like, he knows he's not a woman. He has, like, even if it's like 2% of his mind at this point. But he's lied and deluded himself, and all the rest, like Leah Thomas as well, and others like them, have deluded themselves long enough that in some cases, I think they truly do believe this is their new identity. But we, on the other side, know the truth. These are not women, and they're putting on woman face, which is much more egregiously offensive than blackface, and they're doing it as a grab for attention and corporate sponsorships and public praise, and we cannot give that to them. We have to oppose them, not only for the sake of the real women involved, but for the sake of truth itself. Now we come to one of the worst and probably most disturbing category on the trans side, the people who are pushing for the trans kids. And these include the people on social media in creepy, strange, cross-dressing outfits and caked on makeup, spreading propaganda that there's no such thing as boys or girls, or offering that they'll be there to talk privately if a child's parents don't affirm their gender identity or their transition. And these are the drag queens of the world. They put on highly explicit shows for very young kids. These people are quite simply creeps that have a sexual fascination with children, and they should be kept from having any contact with anyone's kids whatsoever. They use transgenderism and inclusion as gateways to talk about inappropriate topics with elementary school children and younger, and in many cases they're getting away with it. Thankfully, more people are waking up to it, and it's starting to be curbed a little bit. But this is the most infuriating of the facets of the transgender issue. Unfortunately, not the most insidious. There's another level that's more underground and subtle and is being effective in much deeper ways than most people realize. And that's the teachers who bring up their status as non-binaries, or they bring up the fact that they use random neo-pronouns to draw out questions from the kids. They bring this up in class and fill their students' heads with similar concepts. And also, there are people like therapists and doctors who take the slightest sign of not quite fitting into like a gender mold, like a boy that likes pink, likes playing with dolls, and they'll grab onto that and run straight to the conclusion that they need social transition and puberty blockers, and ultimately put them on the path to a lifetime of medical support and possibly much more severe medical interventions. It's really barbaric surgeries, but yeah, they try to get them on those path as early as possible, and they keep planting these seeds. Even the parents sometimes get involved in this while the child's mind is still impressionable and unquestioning, and these are the kinds of people that should disgust us the most, because they're preying on the most vulnerable minds among us, and they try quite often successfully to subtly pull more children into this ideology that will cause them a lifetime of mental turmoil and clashes between who they truly are and the identity that they've been coerced into and had placed upon them. And oftentimes it's going to be very hard to break out of that because they've been raised to think this is who they are. Jesus spoke about people who lead the little ones astray, and I trust you know how that ends up. And that's all that needs to be said. These people need to be met with unyielding resistance. Give them no quarter. Now, let's look at the people on the other side of the debate, on the side that takes a stand against transgenderism in various degrees of opposition. So first, we have people who kind of just want to be left alone, libertarian types, happy to let consenting adults have their surgeries, and air quotes on consenting adults, and play dress up in the opposite gender's clothing and be referred to by whatever pronouns they choose. But they have some qualms about letting them into the women's bathrooms and the sports teams, and just leave the kids out of it. Don't bring it into schools, at least like not until like 8 or something. And that's like the loose, do what you want if you're an adult point of view. And it's better than nothing, but it still falls short. Here's why. If these people truly are the opposite gender, and if it's possible for a man to be a woman, then he is a woman through and through every area of his life or her life. If you're going to affirm him in all these other ways, why not allow him into the woman's bathroom? If his claim is true, he has just as much right as any other woman. And you have to take things to their logical conclusions. If a man can change his body to be a woman, then he is a woman in every sense. And if you follow that logic at every age, I do not believe that, by the way, but that's what happens if you run things out to the end. And taking things to their logical conclusions leads us to the other group on the anti-trans side, which is the group that I belong to. And I'm among the people who oppose transgenderism as a concept in its entirety, because if men are not women and women are not men, this is true in every context. And they cannot function as the opposite sex in the bathrooms. They cannot function as the opposite sex in sports teams. They cannot compel us to call them something that they're not by making us use their preferred pronouns at risk of cancellation. And they can't have doctors make permanent surgical alterations to their bodies, even if they consent to it, because doctors should not be able to do that. That goes against the very first tenet of the oath, do no harm. Because, yeah, it's not about what you can do with your own body. It's about what doctors are allowed to do to other people's bodies. That's just a rabbit trail, but I can get into that on another day. There is objective truth about the world and about who people are, and there is falsehood. And transgenderism is clearly a falsehood based solely on feelings, and to support it in any way or to affirm it in any context is to deviate from the truth and the reality of the world. So I care enough about truth that I won't play that game, not with pronouns, not with societal affirmation, not with any of it. I've laid out the situation and I've described those who oppose us, and with these kind of enemies, the kinds of people I mentioned earlier who are trying to pull in trans kids, who are doing this for attention, who are trying to gain access to female spaces, we need to fight harder than ever to make sure this makes its way out of the mainstream as forcefully as possible. The fight is far from over, but we're gaining ground, and day by day, as more people discover the truth, as more people actually find out what's going on, there are signs of the tide turning in our favor. So make sure you're on the right side of the line when it finally does. Thank you for watching, and I want to give a special shout out to my new subscribers. Hopefully this video will bring some more of you into the club. If you like what you hear, subscribe and keep watching, because I will be making more in the near future. And I will see you all in the next video. God bless.